Good morning and welcome to Cheche, the show where opinion counts, live on Citizen TV. I'm your host, Udwaka Mimo. Now, Kenya is officially a middle-income country. That graduation occurred last September with the rebasing of the economy. It also put the country among the top 10 African economies. Kenya also received much-needed funding for various infrastructure projects with a debut Eurobond offer worth $2 billion US. But we're told that there's not enough money to satisfy the demands of striking public workers. So what is the state of Kenya's economic fortunes? Well, the person who should know is the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Henry Rotich. He's our guest today. Also with me in the studio, we have the regular panel of Mutegi Njau, of Real Media Services, and political analyst David Makali. Good morning and welcome to Cheche. Now, we'll come to various issues of contention because you're under fire from people who want money. But to start with, give us a sense of where we are at the moment, because we're halfway through the financial year and the record budget that you set. I think it was 1.8 trillion shillings. Right, yes. Where do we stand?
Thank you very much. Let me start by saying that we are, in terms of economic growth, we are doing quite well. The economy still remains very resilient, despite all the challenges that we've had. Most of it occurred in 2014. And despite that, we estimate to achieve economic performance of about 5.3%. That remains very strong if you compare with other countries, particularly advanced countries where they are really barely growing. But of course, that's not enough. We want to do more. As you know, we have set in Vision 2030 an ambitious target of 10% growth. That is the growth that we need to deal with the big challenge of unemployment and reducing poverty to some very decent level. So
in terms of growth, because you say that the economy has been resilient in spite of the shocks we received, yes, presumably the security sector and tourism.
Correct,
so
yes.
Where is the growth? What accounts for this?
What accounts for this growth is most of the sectors actually except hotels and restaurants registered growth last year. Mainly driven by the construction industry. As you know, the constructions have been booming both in the road sector and the housing sector. The financial sector has also been very strong. You've seen record profits recorded in that sector. And the ICT sector and agriculture also, despite the weather that wasn't very stable, but agriculture still recorded some respectable growth. So all the sectors except, as I say, hotel and industry recorded growth, which accounted for all these 5.3. And of course, the obvious reason why hotel and restaurants did not grow is because the challenges we've had in the tourism sector brought about by insecurity challenges that we witnessed last year and also previous year, right from the beginning of the Westgate problem, and some pockets of attacks in the country, which sort of scared tourists. But all in all, we've managed to register growth and showing that the economy remain resilient. We have a very vibrant private sector which has actually supported this growth. So that is on growth. The other area that I want to mention is really on the other important parameters of the economy, which is the rate at which prices increase over years or over months, and commonly known as inflation. As you know, this has remained fairly within our targets, or what we normally say.
What is the target?
Single digit. Our target has been 5 or plus or minus 2.5. So we're talking of an upper bound limit of 7.5. At some point, I think last year we just touched 2 months, I think was above that, but largely for the remainder of the months, we were well within that target. that's a
So
good story.
just to break it down, because
yes.
I don't think any of us here is an economist, what you're telling us is that prices of food and basic commodities will remain stable.
Largely remains stable. It just increases by a lower rate than when we say it has grown by 5 or 6% thereabout. It means that it has increased in less faster than what would have happened if, say, in some years back we've had even inflation at 20%, meaning that the rate at which prices have increasing is at 20%. So this is a much modest growth, which is always good for the economy. Prices have to go up every year. So that in that front, we have done very well, and I think if you compare with other countries, inflation at that level, especially with developing countries, is quite good.
Why is it that fuel prices have gone down and the Kenya shilling is going towards the roof? And
yeah.
Although you're saying inflation is low, yeah. But when you see people in the streets and in towns, poverty, where poverty is not, poor people are still very poor.
Yeah, I'll talk about the poverty issue, but on exchange rate, which you just mentioned, is that what has happened on oil prices that have really come down significantly, as you know. It's now about $50 per barrel currently, and this is of course driven by global dynamics, particularly the demand that has come down, and also there have been a strong supply. That's good. That's good for us as a country which relies on importation of oil before we start exploiting ours, which we have discovered. But that's good. What is happening with the exchange rate is more of also a global dynamic. The US dollar has been strengthening in the international currency market. The US economy is strengthening, and there is more now move towards US dollar denominated assets, and that is what has generated a lot of strength there. Then vice versa, we see our exchange, our Kenya shilling to vis-a-vis the dollar as weakened. There are also other domestic factors, as you know. I've just mentioned about the tourism. They still not yet recovered fully. The commodity prices, particularly our tea prices, have also not been very strong. Why
is that? Does that have to do with the international market, or does it have
to do with
local
factors? Yes, it's to do with the international market. I think tea production has been fairly stable here, but the international commodity prices, usually when they all move at the same direction, when oil prices go down, all other commodity prices go down. When they all go up, they all go up based on the global demand. But we think these are temporary phenomena. We will certainly have stability and improvement in commodity prices in this year. And we shouldn't worry so much about the rate at which the exchange rate has moved, because we know that these fundamentals are temporarily, and we should see stability very soon. We also have, of course, enough resources, enough foreign exchange. You just mentioned the Eurobond that we floated, so we have enough resources to deal with any speculations that may enter into the process now.
Okay. Were there any surprises?
What about poverty?
Just a minute. Any surprises before we come to poverty? Because we'll spend some time on poverty. Were there any surprises in terms of performance?
No, not really. We had expected things to look like it. The only surprising was, I think, the rate at which the tourism was affected was beyond our expectation, because we did expect that we will still, even at the high season, we will still receive some tourists. So this is an area where it was a bit a surprise for us. Yes, also, of course, Ebola played a role, particularly also, they are all linked to the tourism, because, as you know, when Kenya Airways cancelled the flights, it also impacted. There was also fears that there will be exposure by tourists when they visit Kenya, because the Ebola was spreading in a way that will cause the fears. So it also played a big role in affecting tourism, in addition to travel advisories that were issued also by some other countries.
There was also the hiccup of the delay in the signing of the economic partnership agreements with Europe,
yes,
which caused a lot of problems for a few months.
Yes, that a little bit was, I would say we had expected a little bit, because we had not concluded the negotiations well in advance. And we had been, of course, warned that if you don't conclude that, we face the risk of our commodities attracting tariffs in the EU, and it did it. And I think the challenge here was that was of course we had expected that was going to happen. So, but we knew that we were going to conclude the EPAS, and we did conclude. It's only that the timing was a little bit delayed, and because it had to do with a lot of negotiating with the other partners, because we had to go together and agree in the economic partnership agreement, and so that also posed a bit of some expectation from the horticulture industry, and the jittery, but we reassured them that we were going to conclude this EPAS, which we did. And I think now that is behind us, and we think things are going to stabilize.
All right, let's come to the poverty now.
Yes, on poverty, I must say that really it still remains one of our biggest policy challenge. As I mentioned earlier, that our current poverty rates, of course, we are still working on farm numbers, but based on household survey of 2005-06, our estimate is that about 40% of Kenyans actually live below the poverty line. Now, this is an area
Wasn't
where
there some research from Synovate that suggested that it's actually higher, about 80%?
I probably they are measuring it differently.
Using different parameters.
If you use the parameters that we use globally or international based practices on measuring poverty, our rough estimate, and also this has been supported by the recent estimates by the World Bank, that poverty is sort of declined from 47% to about 40%. So really the number that we're working, but we're waiting to confirm we have launched the household budget survey, which will give us more accurate information. As you know, this is based on some historical, 2005 is fairly really old year to base these statistics. But going forward, and that is why I wanted to mention that it is very important that we address the challenge of growing our economy to address this poverty challenge. And this is exactly what the government is doing. Investing on the right policies so that we can get ourselves out of this problem. We are doing all this. I mentioned the main policies in investing in infrastructure, in agriculture, where a majority of the Kenyans live, making agriculture more productive, opening up new areas. We are also investing heavily on social protection to support the very vulnerable, and these are really these categories. Yes, it can be little, but it's something. It's something that can keep people.
How are you doing this beyond the 2,000 shillings? Because you're talking about the social safety nets.
Yes, the social safety nets.
Beyond a scheme that was pioneered, I don't think that there's anything bigger that you've done, is there?
It's funds. Maybe a Wezo Fund and all these other enterprises.
Just to add on that is that...
so it's lumped with entrepreneurship
first
as well as social protection?
Well, first we did it is that we actually expanded the number of beneficiaries. And I think we have doubled it in the first budget that we did in 2013-14. This year, we've continued to expand the number of people, the elderly people, the vulnerable, especially the children with AIDS, HIV infected, and a number of categories of children in the semi-arid lands. So we have expanded the beneficiaries, definitely, still keeping the rate at 2,000, but the number of people have increased. We've also gotten support from other development partners to increase this, and we will continue to do that because the policies that we are putting in place obviously will take time before it impacts favorably on unemployment and reduce poverty. But in the meantime, you have to cushion the poor from these big challenges.
But a lot of people believe that our problem in this country is inequality. Because the people who are rich are very rich. Today, people are buying planes by the hundreds. People are flying helicopters all over in the weekend.
Yeah.
People who are poor, extremely very poor. The gap that is there is major. And of course, the question of governance. That is where the illness is.
Agreed. And let me say that even the statistics is very clear that about 10% of Kenyans who are really well off control about 40% of our GDP. So you can see just that 10% is almost controlling 50% of our national cake. So this is an area where we are addressing, and the way to address is making this growth that we are talking about, 5-6%, more inclusive. This is very important that as we grow, we need to direct resources to where where it impacts the poor. So things like providing real free primary education, free maternity care, some of the policies that the government has introduced, these are part of the initiatives to ensure that the growth that we shared among many Kenyans. Increasing the social safety nets to benefit many people is very key. So we are addressing that as we grow. Before, people used to say, okay, let's just grow, we don't care about how we distribute the pie. But the important thing now is to ensure that this growth is shared fully and invest where the poor is. So these are the areas in education, health, and social protection.
How do you reconcile the fact that, from a fairly public and layman perspective, the economy, as you outlined, seems to be prosperous. A lot of money, flying around or moving around. But the general person in this country, if you ask them for money, they're really, really strained at this point. This prosperity that we talk about, the health of the economy that looks positive, and the individual welfare of people. In fact, if you ask people today, they'll tell you they're harder off than they were last year. Is there something not working to the advantage, or the trickle-down effect is not yet felt?
Yeah, and that is why we are saying that this growth of 5 and 6 there that we are talking about is not enough. We need to do more to have really the impact on poverty and unemployment felt. We need, and that is why the government has targeted to grow this economy much faster, 7 to 10% growth rate. This is the growth rate that really will be impactful.
Mr. Rotich, I'll interrupt you,
yes,
because even if we achieve those growth rates and the structures you have in place remain the same, won't we still face the same paradox of the country on paper prospering, yes, but individuals saying that they have less money in their pockets? We recently became a middle-income economy. That hasn't changed anything. You found extra money lying somewhere, over 20% of our GDP. We've become one of the top 10 African countries. But in real terms, how does this translate into my status as an individual? How does it translate into my social mobility?
Correct, and that's why the key thing here is how we really make this big pie that is growing be more inclusive and benefits the poor. And the policies that we put to redistribute this is very key. What I have mentioned, that if we increase free primary education, to make it really free, as you know, currently There's still people are still paying. Then we will increase we reduce the out-of-pocket expenditure on education and also on health. These are really very important for the poor.
Well, what they're likely to do is they're likely to reduce my expense, the cost of living.
Yes.
But it's not likely to increase the money that I'm earning. So you're reducing my burden, but you're not increasing my income. That's where the problem lies. Remember, so how do we mitigate that?
But remember, if the government pays for your education, pays for your health, the extra resources that you have spent on that is available in your pocket.
It is available. But if I was earning, Henry, if I was earning 100,000 shillings per month, for example, well, I was spending that money on paying fees and house and all these things, or health, for example. So that expense is taken away. What I'm caring about is how I increase my 100,000 to 120. That is the part that is the puzzle that is not improving in many people's lives. And that's where we need to.
You can see in those two ways. Of course, increasing what you get
the expense is reduced,
and also what you spend on is also very important. I have mentioned health and education. The other thing that also a lot of Kenyans spend, especially the low income, is on food. So also getting the food available at reasonable price do help to reduce
the cost of living.
And of course, now in terms of raising what you get is all really a question of economy expands, opportunities available. And these are the interventions we are doing, ensuring that if you want to expand your business, let's have you get credit in a much cheaper way than what we get at the moment.
That's interesting. Let's pause there for a minute. Because I think in your pitch for the Eurobond, one of the risks you talked about was that we have a huge informal sector that's poorly documented and poorly taxed. So when you say that you're offering credit, who are you offering credit to? Is it to small entrepreneurs? Is it to formal more established entrepreneurs, the big companies? Give us a sense of where that stands.
Actually, all categories, the large, medium, and the small, are all important.
So that includes the informal person who's just set up a trading business in Gikomba.
Right, and that is why all these interventions that we have done in terms of providing even money through the Uwezo Fund, all these are all meant to access cheaper credit facilities for those actually Kenyans who actually cannot even get into the bank and borrow, and that is very, very important. There are other interventions that we have done to provide also opportunities. I would mention about what we have done in terms of the opening up procurement to the youth, women, and the vulnerable or the disadvantaged members of our society to access government and supply contracts to that. That's very important also. So as you give them credit, you also train them on the skills, and also they can actually meaningfully participate in the economy. So all these interventions very critical to alleviate the poverty that we are actually talking about.
Okay. Let's talk about agriculture. You mentioned it before.
Actually, we're taking a break, and I suspect that David
there's something pursuant to that. Would I be wrong to say that, look, the current apparent favorable economic environment is the product of, more money being released by government, more opportunities being created by government? As you mentioned appropriately, the building sector, construction sector has benefited a lot because of money basically coming from government to support, to give opportunities to people who are contractors, employing and trickle down jobs. And that the foundations for actual economic prosperity are not yet in place. This is a temporary interim environment, and that we expect to see this happy feeling of 5% economic performance, and then they'll go down before then the foundations begin to pick what we're doing in the next 3, 4, 5 and on years. So we expect a dip in the next 2 years.
In terms of growth, no. We
would you say that on there, even if it were true?
No, we don't expect a dip unless something really happens, you know, a big shock. But you know, what we are really investing is to sustain this growth. The important thing is when we say 5, can we do 5 next year? Can we do 10, 7 next year? It's very important. And to sustain that growth is the basic infrastructure must be in place. And that is why we have emphasized a lot of investment. As you know, we have started with the standard gauge rail line. We are doing more roads now all over the country. We are expanding our ports, both sea and the airports, water systems, energy, which is very critical to lower the cost of energy. As paying 18 cents per kilowatt cannot really sustain manufacturing in this case, and that's why we are putting and saying, well, let's put more power into our national grid, cheap power, because that is really the fundamental. Agriculture, very important, also investing for productivity of agriculture, because that's where all Kenyans are, most Kenyans are, and also opening up new areas. And you know, Kenya is only 10% of Kenya is arable. We need more open up new areas because we have more mouths to feed now with the population growing. Okay,
so we'll come to agriculture after the break. This is Cheche. We're live on Citizen TV, and we're exploring Kenya's economic outlook with the Cabinet Secretary for the National Treasury, Henry Rotich. What do you think? Are you experiencing Kenya's growth? SMS us on 22422 or tweet, which is you can tweet us. The handle is @Cheche_TV.